We are in the middle, actually toward the end more than the middle, of the Maimer Oosifartem from 1951, Tafshin Yud Aleph, from Lag Boimer of that year. And what we just finished doing last week was taking this prototype of the first Midah, the Midah of Chesed, and we went through it on the side of your Neshama, all 7 sub-traits, from Chesed Shebechesed until Malchus Shebechesed. And then we went through it on the side of the animal, which is in a sense what we're really discussing in this Maimer, the refinement of the animal from Chesed Shebechesed until Malchus Shebechesed. That was an example, a sample. Now you go figure it out. But the Rebbe is saying very strongly that the days of Sfira are days of working on yourself, of refining your animal. So now we're up to the next section of the Maimer. In the next section, we focus on a certain diuk in the pasuk that we raised in the beginning of the Maimer as a question, and we totally shelved and ignored, and now we're coming back to it. It begins by sort of reminding us of what we understand, that the concept of Oosifartem, Sfiras HaOmer, we had Yetzias Mitzrayim, we have Sfiras HaOmer, we have Matan Torah. And this connects to the pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Mashcheni, draw me, God's complete revelation of self by the Exodus, by Yetzias Mitzrayim, Acharecha Narutza, after you we will run, the Nefesh HaBahami and the Neshama together, and because Nefesh HaBahami is on board, the Neshama is racing, because Nefesh HaBahami is racing toward Hashem, which now we understand is the refinement of the animal, the saddling and riding of the animal, using the energies of the animal to serve Hashem, to lead us to Haviani HaMelech Chedrav, the king brought me into his chambers, to lead us to Matan Torah, that fusion, that intimacy, that oneness of Hashem and the Jewish people. So by Yetzias Mitzrayim, how did we get out? I mean, we were in Memtesh Shari Tuma, the 49th gate of impurity. Well, the pasuk says, Mashcheni, draw me out. Hashem revealed himself. It was a complete revelation from above, and that revelation from above caused the neshama to get out. It did not cause refinement of the animal. If you remember, as the Rebbe mentions here and discussed earlier, the pasuk says, when discussing Yetzias Mitzrayim, Ki barach ha'am, the nation fled. And we're like, the nation fled? Who are they running from? Paro is saying, go, 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 good riddance. The Egyptians are saying, you want more silver? You want more gold? You want more clothing? Buy. So who are they running from? So the Alter Rebbe discusses this in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe says, they were running from themselves. They were running from their own evil. Because even though there was a Giloy of Melech Malchim Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it's discussed in the Haggadah, even though Hashem was completely revealed, this didn't touch the animal at all. The animal had no relationship to this. It like, bing, didn't hit it, didn't affect it. So the godly soul is able to absorb this Giloy of Melech Malchim Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The godly soul is inspired and is on fire and is running away from the inner evil of self. And we said, like, sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes you don't feel it. You're not understanding. You can't grasp it. You just know this is it. And you got to run from the other parts of self. It's interesting what the Rebbe is saying is here. I don't know if we'll get to it today, but this concept really resonates with much later in the Maimer when the Rebbe explains the connection to Lag Ba'omer, Hoyd Shebahoyd. This really links back to this concept. The Rebbe doesn't link it back, but as I'm talking about this concept, I'm thinking about that one and I see, oh wow, it's really a mirror image. Sometimes you just run. You don't even understand. You don't feel. You don't get what's going on. You just do what you have to do and run from self until you gain the strength to deal with self. So that was Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we know, well, so how do we get out? Mashcheni. Hashem drew us out. Kiloi. Melech Malchem Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But then afterwards, there's the work. You know, that was the flash, and now there's the climb. And Sfiras HaOmer, of course, is the climb from Memtesh Shari Tuma, from the 49th gate of impurity, all the way up until Memtesh Shari Kedusha, until the 49th level of holiness. So how did we do it? So the pasuk says, in talking about Sfiras HaOmer, which is the tool of how we did it, the refinement of self, Oosifartem lachem mimacharas haShabbos. Count from after the Shabbos. And the beginning of the Maimer, the Rebbe questioned this phrase, and the Rebbe said, this phrase gave us problems. Because the Bitusim were like forerunners of as the assimilation, the Jew who's looking at everything through secular eyes. The Bitusim said, well, we don't accept Torah Shebaal Peh, and we're going to count from after the first Shabbos in this season, because it says Mimachos HaShabbos, Saturday night. Every year they started on Saturday night. Mimachos HaShabbos, right after the Shabbos, we're going to start our count. The Chacham said, no, that's not what it means. Mimachos HaShabbos means, Shabbos in this case means Yantif. Of course, this is in Eretz Yisrael, so there's one day of Yantif. So Mimachos HaShabbos, the day after the first day of Yantif, what we would in our world call the second night of Pesach, the second Seder, that's when you begin the count. And the Bitusim are like, Mimachos HaShabbos and Mimachos HaShabbos. Every year, we start our count Saturday night. So why does Hashem do it this way? Why make confusing something that doesn't have to be confusing? There's enough stuff confusing that have to be confusing, you know? This one seems Hashem could have made it so simple. Mimachos HaChag, Mimachos HaYantif, right? We can think of simpler ways to say it. So the Rebbe says here that, of course, this term Shabbos is very needed and very precise and relates to what we're discussing here. Because what we're being asked here to do is take self, which is stuck, which is in the mud, which has a lot of impurities, and scrub, transform, like come out beautifully clean and fresh and pure, and from the 49th of this to the 49th of that. How did they do it? They did it Mimacharas HaShabbos. What does that mean? Shabbos is representative of the highest energy within Seder Hishtalshalos. Meaning, on one hand, Shabbos reflects Seder Hishtalshalos, reflects the normative energies of creation, because Shabbos is a day in time. The parameters of creation are time and space. Hashem, God, and all those energies of God are beyond time and space. Time and space are creations. They're the boxes, the most foundational boxes within which everything happens. So Shabbos represents time. It's part of the weekly cycle. So on one hand, it's very much within Seder Hishtalshalos. On the other hand, Shabbos is the upper edge of Seder Hishtalshalos. Why? Because we know that the godliness of Shabbos has nothing to do with us. Meaning, in contrast to Yantif, the holidays are consecrated by us, right? The Jews were given the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. We consecrate the month. And from the month is determined the holiday. So in the end of the day, the energy of the holiday comes from the consecration of the Jew. We infuse in the Yantif its holiness. But Shabbos has nothing to do with us. As the Pasuk says, Shabbos is, it's not Pasuk, as our Chachamim say, Shabbos is on its own sanctified. Shabbos' sanctification has nothing to do with us. You know, before there was a Jewish people, there was Shabbos. From the first creation, you know, a few hours after Adam's creation, or 3 hours later or so, there came the first Shabbos. That's when we know fire was created. And people wonder when fire was created. We know. Once a Shabbos for Havdalah, suddenly there's fire. Shabbos has nothing to do with the work of the Jew. It's part of the energy God infused in it, which means the holiness of Shabbos comes from Hashem directly. It's a very interesting and practical point because, of course, for us, something unusual always has a certain significance, right? Like by Sheva Brachos, you're supposed to have a panim chadashas, a new person, because that adds to the joy and makes it feel special. So for most of us, being human, Yantif feels more special than Shabbos, because Pesach is that 1 week, which we prepare for weeks before, and Purim is that 1 day, and Rosh Hashanah is those 2 days, and Yom Kippur is that holiest 1 day of the year. So when we look at a Yantif, we look at it as far more significant than a Shabbos. The truth is we're wrong. In terms of holiness, there could be other factors, but in terms of the holiness factor, Shabbos is holier than any Yantif, because Shabbos' sanctity comes from Hashem, and the Yantif sanctity comes from the Jewish people. So therefore, Shabbos represents the highest edge of Seder Hishtalshalos. On one hand, it's Seder Hishtalshalos, it's time. On the other hand, it's a time sanctified by God. So it's within Hishtalshalos, beyond Hishtalshalos. It has a lot of energy, but we're told its energy is only enough to extract itself from the limits of Hishtalshalos. Like, it's not really limited because of this consecration by God, but it's not powerful enough to get the rest of us out. It's just powerful enough to get itself out. So what would reflect energy beyond Hishtalshalos? Mimacharas HaShabbos. From the space of time after the Shabbos, after implying higher than, implying beyond. So we're here, human beings, in the trenches, dealing with our garbage, dealing with our dark spaces, dealing with our vulnerabilities, dealing with our weaknesses, but we're enabled to do this by an energy that's literally bigger than Seder Shtalshalos. Just like by Yetzias Mitzrayim, it worked because the Digal Lehem Melech Malach Baruch Hu Go'olam, right? That God says, Ani v'lo malach, ani v'lo saraf. I, no angel, no saraf, ani v'lo shliach, no messenger. No, God himself was needed to take us out of Egypt. It's very interesting. In the Haggadah, perhaps reflecting this point, you know how many times the name of Moshe is mentioned in the Haggadah?
Exactly. I don't think he's mentioned at all.
He's mentioned, well, that's pretty close to the correct answer, Rachel. He's mentioned once in a proof text, meaning in the script of narration of the Haggadah, he's not there at all. Within the Haggadah, of course, many points have proof texts. And in one quote, he's mentioned. That's it. That's the only reference to Moshe in the entire Haggadah. Now, we are not diminishing the value of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he's the Goyel. Goyel Rishon, who Goyel Achron, Moshe Melech HaMashiach, he's the Goyel. But in the Haggadah, we're emphasizing the role of God. I'm the one that took you out. You needed my energy. You were so stuck. Only God himself could get you out. And just as that was true by Yetzias Mitzrayim to just helicopter us away, in a different way, it's also true when we are doing the work. Meaning by Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's like we were lifted out. By Sfiras HaOmer, in these 49 days, we're working hard. We're working hard. But we're working hard, empowered by Hashem's energies, mimacharas HaShabbos, higher than Hishtalshalos. And it's reflective really of in general, like we say about tshuva, right? It's a very appropriate topic to mention, in El tshuva. So what does Hashem say? Pischuli kechudash hamachat, right? Open up for me like the eye of the needle. Oh my gosh, those needles are so small, that eye of the needle. Ever try to thread it when you get older and your eyes are tired? It's really hard. So open up for me like the eye of the needle. I'll open up for you like the ulam of the Beis HaMikdash that was so massive, that had no doors, that was always opened. Now, we do tshuva. It might not feel like that. It might not feel when we're doing our tshuva, and of course this is a very appropriate time to do our tshuva. It might not feel like, oh yeah, just that little eye of a needle. It might feel like we're really working and we're really pushing. Tshuva me ahava, tshuva me yira, on whatever level we're pushing really hard. But relative to the response by Hashem, I'm the eye of the needle. So similarly here, when we're doing the work of birur of the midas, when we are doing refinement of self, it's hard work. It doesn't feel easy, but if we understand how much Hashem is empowering this work, mimacharas HaShabbos, Hashem is lifting us up with so many koichos, with so much energy. Therefore, whatever we're doing is so powerful. Has anyone here had this experience where, they decided to work on themselves? I believe all had that experience. And they took on something. And actually, even though in the beginning, maybe it was tough, but it was so powerful. Like there was such change. And it was so almost surprising how quickly or smoothly or deeply that change happened. Anyone had that experience? I definitely have had. Anyone else here? Like you've decided to work on something and maybe you were even like me hesitating. It's such a big thing. How am I going to do it? How am I going to hold on to this? This is such a huge hachlata. I don't know. I'm scared. I don't know if I can commit, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff we tell ourselves. And then you push and then you do it. And then like, oh, that was not such a big deal. That actually was a really fast transformation of self. I hope you've had that experience. You should have had that experience. If you're not responding, maybe you don't like talking, or maybe you're not connecting the dots now. But I would assume every one of us had that experience because that is the experience of Avodah. Because it's Mimacharas HaShabbos. Because Hashem really is empowering our Avodah. And like the beginning stages, it's hard, like, getting into the water when it's cold and you stick your toe in and it's cold. You don't want to jump in. Just jump in. Get over the initial shock. It's great. So when we do Avodah, we build up a lot of resistance, of course. I mean, our animal soul and evil inclination know what they're doing. But when we actually jump in and we commit and we do the Avodah, usually, it's amazing how powerful it is. It's amazing how quickly there's real change. Because Mimachros HaShabbos. Because the energy we're tapping into is literally higher than Ishtalshalos, and there's a lot of help in what we're doing. Any questions on anything I just said? Any thoughts, any reflections, any questions?
I mean, the last Shabbos before when I did the bench lifting, it does change in a second. I mean, all of a sudden there is this serenity and quiet that, I mean, it doesn't always feel that way, but this last Shabbos, I just sat on the chair after I was done and I said, Hashem, thank you so much for giving us this day. It's like, it's I don't know how I ever lived without this,
I agree. I it's always when Shabbos is over, it's like, oh my gosh, how many days left till Shabbos? Basta
Yeah.
Shabbos, basta Menucha. We should always feel.
But it's really that you feel completely different. It's like not only that, I paid attention. I mean, my husband just told me, just in the beginning, my body works differently. I get up in the morning, I do whatever I need to do, go to shul. I don't even think about needing to go to the bathroom or anything. And I'm a very regular person. On Shabbos, everything stops. Like a body of a Jew changes on Shabbos.
Yes, that is what Chassidus says. Chassidus says the pulse of the Jew is different on Shabbos.
Yeah.
In the Neshama Yisera, where we're accessing, Shabbos is the closest we get to Mashiach energy. Says that during the regular week, the energy of creation is from Hashem's speech. Basar mamaris nivra ha'olam. The world is functioning and constantly existing every second because Hashem is speaking it into existence. Shabbos is not Hashem's speech. It's deeper. It's Hashem's thoughts. So that makes it a much deeper expression and revelation of God's self on Shabbos than on any other day. And that's why it says that literally the pulse of a Jew is different on Shabbos. Mashiach, we're told, is like God's subconscious thoughts, God's unlettered thoughts. Not just thought, which is deepest expression of self, but within thought, the deepest, most intimate thought that doesn't even come to the concept of mentally the articulation of words, what we would call the subconscious thought. That's the energy we'll all be experiencing every single day by Mashiach.
Incredible. And Sundays usually for me is a down day. It's like I have no energy, I'm not in a great mood. And my husband said, well, the Neshama Yetera left, so maybe that's why.
So many people tell me that, and I've experienced it so many times myself. Motzei Shabbos or Sunday, we're just like deranged. So many people have told me that, and I've so often experienced it. And it's just like, I always feel that, yes, we had this high, this Neshama Yisera, what extra energy. Could you imagine Neshama Yisera? And then when something, such an infusion leaves, and then you have to pull yourself together and say, we're here to work. Adam la'amal yulad. Man is here to work. There's 6 days of work. Hashem wants me to work and create and change this world and bring Mashiach. And how many days is it till Shabbos?
And I also heard that, and we do that, if you do Melav Malka, it really helps. It really helps to move on to the next day. You know what I mean? To Yemei Chol. And I do see the difference. If we miss it, I can tell. But what I wanted to ask you is that we said that Hashem said Ani velo saraf, like Hashem Himself took us out of Mitzrayim, and the Rebbe said that the Geula that we're coming to now is going to be we'll see more niflaot than we saw in Mitzrayim. So this is actually going to be based on our avoda, or is it that Hashem feels like, okay, this is enough, we need to do something about it? You know what I mean?
So
what
when
do you
we
think?
say that Hashem took us out, it doesn't mean Hashem Himself personally took us out, not the Saraf, not the Malach, not the Shliach. It doesn't preclude avoda. It means the energy of the Giloi was from Hashem Himself. It says, Kimei Tzeis Chameres Mitzrayim are Niflos. They recorded the pasuk extensively throughout the year of 57-51. Roughly we'll say 1991. Of course, it's not exactly because that's not the Jewish year. But Tafshin Nun Aleph. So yes, the Rebbe says all the energies of Yetzias Mitzrayim we will experience by the redemption. It doesn't mean that the redemption will be without work. What it means is, in the end, despite all of our work, Hashem's response is Hashem. Not meaning despite. Despite's the wrong way to say it. Meaning we're doing our work, and Hashem's response is, whoa, so much bigger, as if that was work. What did we do compared to Hashem's response? Now, of course, with the Mashiach, you have Zachu and Lo Zachu. But in any case, even in the Zachu, meritorious state, which of course I definitely assume we deserve, what Hashem's going to do is going to feel like, what? No way we created that. No way our Avodah created that. Because it's not created by our Avodah. It's in response to our Avodah. And at the same time, when Mashiach comes, the Rebbe says in two different places, that Hashem, in one place, the Rebbe says Hashem, in one place, the Rebbe says Melech HaMashiach, so I assume they'll do it together, that Hashem and Melech HaMashiach will go to every single Jew and thank every single Jew for what they did to create Geula. And the Rebbe puts in parentheses, even though Hashem knows they could have done more. So even though Hashem knows what we're capable of, and even though perhaps we're not doing what we're capable of, still Hashem appreciates that we brought Geula. We brought Geula. He brought Geula. He set up a system. We brought Geula. When we did what we needed to do, this allowed him to finish it off and create the reality of Geula. All right, we will stop at this point. Thank you so much for joining. If you had not joined, there would not have been a class. Thank you so much. Good Shabbos.
Thank you. Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Bye.